From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. headed to India's southern city of Bengaluru on Thursday morning, marking the second part of his 5-day state visit to India following a productive 3-day leg in the Indian capital of New Delhi. The plane carrying the Philippine president and his delegation left Palam Air Force Station and arrived at the Kempe Gowda International Airport about an hour later. The president was welcomed by Minister and Consul General Maria Cynthia Pelayo along with Honorary Consul General Ashwin Muthia. President Marcos so far described his inaugural visit to India as remarkably productive, citing very openness and the willingness from both sides to develop and deepen collaboration. While in New Delhi, President Marcos met with President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with both countries agreeing to elevate bilateral ties to a strategic partnership. The president also oversaw the signing of key agreements on defense, maritime cooperation, health, tourism, space research, and digital technology, among others. President Marcos addressed Indian business leaders engaged with Filipino community members and delivered a foreign policy speech at the Observer Research Foundation, where he underscored the importance of forging coalitions with like-minded states to uphold peace and international law in the Indo-Pacific. In a televised interview with India's First Post, President Marcos bared that the Philippines is in the process of acquiring more BrahMos supersonic missiles from India as part of its military modernization program. The president is expected to meet with tech and innovation leaders in Bengaluru as the Philippines looks to deepen cooperation in digital transformation and emerging technologies. Bengaluru is often referred to as the Silicon Valley of India due to its thriving technology industry and startup ecosystem.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Thursday made a strong pitch to Indian business leaders, citing the country's robust economic momentum, a young, tech-savvy workforce, and wide-ranging reforms aimed at making the Philippines more attractive to long-term foreign investment. Speaking before top executives at the Philippines-India Business Forum, the president said the Philippines and India are strategically aligned across key sectors, from digital innovation and renewable energy to healthcare and semiconductors, and invited Indian firms to partner in building shared prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. President Marcos added that the government is committed to supporting foreign investors with a stable regulatory environment and incentives of up to 27 years. In a wide-ranging address, President Marcos also spotlighted the Philippines' digital economy, which is projected to exceed $40 billion by 2030, and its consistent gross domestic product or GDP growth of 5.7% last year. The chief executive likewise proposed the start of formal talks for a Philippines-India preferential trade agreement to deepen two-way trade and diversify product flows. The Bengaluru Forum brought together Indian and Filipino leaders from sectors such as information technology and business process management or ITBPM, fintech, telecoms, digital services, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, manufacturing, and infrastructure, many of which saw new agreements inked during the visit.
Our young, skilled, English-speaking workforce continues to attract global investment, making us a preferred destination for talent. And our policy direction is very clear: to make the Philippines a trusted, connected, and competitive node in the Indo-Pacific economy. This is the spirit of our administration's Bagong Pilipinas vision, a new Philippines that enables innovation, drives inclusive growth, and welcomes partners who share our aspirations for prosperity and for progress. To realize this vision, we are laying a strong foundation for long-term, high-quality investment. We have vigorously pursued critical structural reforms that make the Philippines a more attractive and more reliable destination for capital, for technology, and for talent. To our esteemed Indian partners, I want to assure you that the Philippine government stands ready to embrace your investments with open arms and with continuing and unwavering support. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are building here is not just another bilateral program. It is a powerful platform for long-term strategic convergence, one that recognizes our strengths, aligns our ambitions, and delivers tangible results for our people. So let's move forward. Let's do it with confidence, with resolve, and with a spirit of camaraderie. Let us seize this moment to make bold, future-ready decisions. Let us demonstrate that when India and the Philippines work together, we do not just exchange goods. We build prosperity, we transfer knowledge, and we lead with purpose. To all our partners here today, we are ready. We can make it happen together.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Thursday said his administration's push to have the eGovPH Super App, which will facilitate the delivery of faster, simpler, and more convenient public services to Filipinos, is born out of necessity to keep the Philippines abreast with the times. In his podcast, the president said almost no one cannot operate in 2025 if a business is not online. President Marcos acknowledged that it takes 3 days to get regular documents from government offices due to long queues. The chief executive said, as a country, as an economy, the Philippines need to be competitive.
Because that's the only way. That's the only way to do it. You cannot operate in 2025 na kinakamay-kamay mong forms, pupunta-punta ka sa opisina, you take 3 days, 3 araw, kasi akala mo tapos na yung dokumento mo, ay hindi, may kulang pa ito, pumunta ka doon, tapos lalapit na yung fixer sa'yo, ay naku, right. the whole experience, the whole bad experience. So, that doesn't work anymore. And if we are to compete as a country, as an economy, kailangan natin makipagsabayan. And look at China, how digitalized China is. We have to be at that level. Look at Singapore. Look at Korea.
Yes.
Ito yung mga karatig bansa natin. These are the people we do business with. So to be able to do business with them properly, we need to digitalize. But digitalization is not only for business, for education. It's absolutely imperative now that children know how to use a computer, they know how to use the internet, and they know how to do work on the internet. Hindi na pwedeng hindi. It's not an option anymore.
President Marcos said he made sure the eGovPH Super App is simple so that ordinary Filipinos would be able to use it. What is needed now, he said, is to inform the people of the app. As for the farmers, seniors, or those who have no access to the internet or smartphones, President Marcos said the government will reach out to them and teach them. Meanwhile, the president said digitalization is not only for business but also for education.
Made sure while nung sinusulat pa yung code dyan, ang test ko lagi, ang sinasabi ko, kailangan isimple ninyo. Kailangan napakadali. So tumingin kami, we did a little study. There are 89 million Filipino Facebook users. So sabi ko, dapat yung app natin, yung eGov app natin, kung kaya mo mag-Facebook, kaya mo mag-eGov app. So, hindi na kailangan masyadong turuan. What is now, ang kailangan lang natin gawin ngayon ay ipaalam sa tao na may ganito. Huwag na kayong pupunta sa opisina. Kung yung mga nakakatanda, yung mga hindi masyadong sanay sa computer, kahit na grade school, alam na nilang gawin yan. Tututo sila because tuturuan sila. We will have to educate our people. But again, 89 million, that's a good majority already of Filipinos who can. Halimbawa, may magsasaka, hindi talaga walang pagkateki. Yung anak niya, kaya niya turuan. Kaya siyang turuan. But they have to know that it is available.
That was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
In the meantime, the Philippines and India sealed 18 business agreements on Wednesday spanning renewable energy, digital services, infrastructure, manufacturing, healthcare, and education as President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. continued the second leg of his state visit in India. The deals were presented to President Marcos during the Philippines-India Business Forum. According to Trade Secretary Cristina Roque, the deals reflect the deepening economic engagement between the two countries and signal strong investor confidence in the Philippines, especially in priority sectors such as information technology and business process management or IT-BPM, energy, and digital innovation. Roque said these agreements cover a wide range of strategic sectors and serve as tangible outcomes of collaborative efforts. They will serve as the foundation for ongoing and future business engagements between the Philippines and India. Roque lauded the private sector for driving the momentum in bilateral ties. President Marcos is expected to meet with Indian business leaders and visit key tech and innovation hubs in Bengaluru, often dubbed as India's Silicon Valley, before wrapping up his 5-day state visit.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Wednesday said the Philippines would inevitably be affected in the event of a military conflict between China and the United States over Taiwan, citing the country's geographic proximity and the presence of thousands of Filipino workers on the self-ruled island. In an interview with Indian media outlet First Post during his state visit to India, the president said that if there is a confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there is no way that the Philippines can stay out of it simply because of the country's physical geographic location. While President Marcos expressed hesitation over the possibility of getting drawn into regional conflict, he emphasized that national sovereignty and humanitarian responsibilities would compel the Philippines to act. The chief executive also raised concerns about the safety of Filipinos living and working in Taiwan who would be at immediate risk should hostilities erupt. President Marcos warned that any repatriation effort would be extremely difficult in a live combat zone. There are an estimated 160,000 overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in Taiwan, many of whom are employed in electronic factories and domestic work. The Philippines has historically maintained a one China policy while sustaining robust economic and people-to-people ties with Taiwan.
To be very practical about it,
if there is a confrontation over Taiwan between China and the United States, there is no way that the Philippines can stay out of it, simply because of our physical geographic location. To understand how close Taiwan is to the Philippines, the large city of Kaohsiung in Taiwan is a 40-minute flight away from the capital of my province in northern Philippines, in Lawag. That's how close it is. And so if you think about it, if there is an all-out war, then we will be drawn into it. And I assure you, with the greatest hesitation, but we will have to defend our territory and our sovereignty. Furthermore, there are many, many Filipino nationals in Taiwan, and that would be immediately a humanitarian problem, because we will have to get involved, because we will have to go in there, or find a way to go in there and to bring our people home, as we do whenever they find themselves in areas of conflict. And that, for me, would be the most considerable concern for us, at least in the early days. And so that's why I say we would immediately mobilize everything that we could to bring our people out. And that's not an easy thing to do, considering that you are in the middle of a combat zone. So it would not be a small problem by any means.
President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Meanwhile, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. pushed back against China's narrative that the Philippines is provoking instability in the region at the behest of more powerful nations, saying the country is acting on its own to uphold sovereignty and defend national interest. In an interview with Indian news outlet First Post, the president dismissed insinuations that Manila's deepening security ties with countries like the United States and India make it a mere proxy. President Marcos said the Philippines' actions are not driven by foreign interests, but by a constitutional mandate to protect its own territory and people. The chief executive noted that the country's strategic partnerships are based on shared values, mutual respect, and a common interest in maintaining peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific.
The narrative coming out of Beijing when it comes to the Philippines is always to imply that we are acting for other countries. And in this case with India, say that we are trying to leverage our alliances with larger, more powerful countries to cause instability. But that's certainly not the case. The subtext to that was that we do not have our own agency, that we are just bystanders that being told what to do. And that certainly is not the case. What we do in the Philippines is because it is our duty as officials, as leaders, as the military, as citizens, to defend our country. And so that is what we are doing. Now, friends like India, friends like the United States, like Australia, like South Korea, like Japan, who are also feeling that they must defend their own territory and sovereignty, should join forces, are joining forces. And who are we to turn down such assistance and such help? And we are, of course, ourselves very willing to also assist those partners, our partners around the world. And so this is, it's not quite the right analysis of what the Philippines is doing or what the Philippines' foreign policy is. It does, I suppose, serves that narrative that it is really that we are acting as a, I don't know, as a puppet state. to the United States and to all the allies of the United States. I have to, this, I think it doesn't take very much reading and discussing to see very, very clearly, very, very quickly that that's simply not true.
The remark comes amid heightened tensions in the West Philippine Sea, where repeated confrontations have occurred between Philippine vessels and Chinese Coast Guard and militia ships. Beijing continues to assert sweeping claims over almost the entire South China Sea through its so-called 9-dash line, now updated to a 10-dash line, overlapping with the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague ruled in favor of the Philippines, invalidating China's expansive claims and upholding Manila's sovereign rights over areas including Ayungin Shoal and Scarborough Shoal. China has rejected the ruling and intensified its presence in disputed waters, including the use of water cannons and blocking resupply missions. President Marcos's administration has adopted a firmer stance compared to its predecessor, filing diplomatic protests and bolstering security ties with like-minded countries to deter aggression and uphold international law. Asked if the repeated near collisions at sea could escalate into a broader conflict, President Marcos said war is unlikely, but miscalculations are a serious concern. The Philippine president emphasized that closer coordination with allies and open channels of communication, including with China, are critical to reducing the risk of escalation and preserving regional peace.
That is precisely what we are worried about. The likelihood of a full-blown out war of one side or the other saying, okay, I'm going to war tomorrow, is very, very small. No one, I don't think, no one involved, any of these parties that we just spoke about, no one wants to go to war. However, and this is again, that's what I said, that's why it's so important for us to be interoperable with our allies, is you can make a mistake. Some guy pushes the wrong button. You know, the navigation goes wrong, and a mistake, a misunderstanding and a mistake. And that could just blow out of proportion, and people start to overreact, and before you know it, it's a shooting war, and that is what we want to avoid.
You just heard Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of National Defense, or DND, on Thursday said the Philippines and India's defense ties have been strengthened with the signing of 3 Terms of Reference, or TORs, eyeing closer cooperation between the two nations' major armed services. In a statement, DND spokesperson Assistant Secretary Arsenio Andolong said these TORs were signed by Defense Secretary Gilberto Chodoro Jr. and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh on Tuesday in New Delhi. Secretary Chodoro was part of the delegation accompanying President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on his official visit to India, scheduled from the 5th to the 8th of August. Andalong said among the significant outcomes of the visit was the signing of 3 TORs, covering each of the major service branches of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, and the Indian Armed Forces. These are the TOR between the Indian Air Force and the Philippine Air Force on air staff talks, TOR between the Indian Army and the Philippine Army on Army-to-Army staff talks, and TOR between the Indian Navy and the Philippine Navy on Navy-to-Navy staff talks. Andalong said the TORs serve as frameworks for establishing the respective working groups of the AFP major services with their Indian counterparts, facilitating structured and recurring staff-level talks. The working groups will be instrumental in advancing cooperation in areas such as military education and joint training, capability development, logistics, maritime domain awareness, and humanitarian assistance and disaster response. The DND spokesperson added that President Marcos's visit to India highlights the Philippines' strategic direction in cultivating robust bilateral defense relationships with like-minded partners and reflects the country's continued engagement in shaping a secure, stable, and resilient Indo-Pacific.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, is intensifying efforts to bring frontline government services closer to overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, worldwide through the Bagong Bayani ng Mundo OFW Serbisyo Caravan, while targeting the opening of new migrant workers offices or MWOs abroad. In a media briefing on Thursday, Migrant Workers Secretary Leo Magpayo announced that the OFW Serbisyo Caravan has served over 10,000 OFWs since its launch in Hong Kong on June 7th. He said after Hong Kong, other Serbisyo caravans have been held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, Osaka in Japan, Doha, Qatar, and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Kakdak said the latest leg held in Dubai on August 3rd drew an estimated 12,000 OFWs, recording 5,928 served individuals with 11,659 transactions completed in a day. He said that because of the unexpected flock of OFWs, many were not accommodated. Among the most in-demand services availed of by OFWs during the caravan were Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA membership renewal and e-cards, assistance from PhilHealth and Pag-ibig, specifically its investment savings program, as well as Philippine Statistics Authority or PSA and PhilSys services like birth certificates and certificates of no marriage or Senomar, and the national ID applications. Also present during the caravan to offer their services were the Social Security Systems or SSS and the Department of Information and Communications Technology or DICT. Due to its success, the DMW will also launch the caravans in Jeddah on August 8th and Al Khobar on August 15th. Meanwhile, to be able to serve more, he cited efforts to sharpen digitalization through partnerships with VFS Global and Dataflow to enable OFWs to access services online when feasible, while maintaining specific services like legal counseling or sensitive welfare cases in face-to-face mode due to privacy and confidentially concerns. From August 9 to 16, Kakdak said he will lead a foreign mission in Liberia and Nigeria, marking the first ever DMW visit to West Africa. He said Morocco currently hosts the only MWO on the African continent, and that Nigeria has over 6,000 Filipino workers, mostly employed in oil and gas, maritime shipping, manufacturing, construction, education, and information technology sectors, while about 150 Filipinos residing in Liberia are almost underserved. The DMW currently operates 42 MWOs globally, and 4 new offices are expected to be opened within the year, specifically in Cambodia, Vietnam, Turkey, and South Africa.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service is now live on audio streaming. Just download Evox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.